This is Rick Cassels from exercisesforinjuries.com. Today I have another interview for you, and it's with Nate Miyaki. Hopefully I got that right.
That's right, man.
And Nate and I are just we're gonna kind of chat about kind of diet myths out there, or fat loss myths. And I got a stack of questions for him, and we're just going to kind of go through the questions and kind of break some of those myths that are out there when it comes to fat loss. So Nate, maybe we'll start off with, you can give people a bit of a background of who you are if they don't know who you are, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah. So basically, my career is kind of focusing now more on writing. So I'm doing a lot of kind of nutrition writing in the industry, right, for places like T Nation, Muscle and Fitness, Men's Fitness, Men's Health, and kind of outside of that, I work primarily for the past, say, 15 years now. Wow, getting older. As a nutrition coach and trainer, and from an athletic perspective, I've competed in some natural bodybuilding, done some fitness modeling to help pay the bills and things like that. So a little bit of a variety as an athlete and a coach and writer. So that's kind of the summary there.
Okay. So we'll kind of jump into it. So what probably is common thought out there, belief, is that people should end up focusing on like a low carb diet when it comes to fat loss. But that might not necessarily be the most appropriate approach for, let's say, athletes and exercisers, people that end up exercising. Maybe you can kind of explain why that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll first start by saying that low carb diets, I believe they're absolutely the best approach for certain demographics. Say if you're sedentary and you're not exercising, so you're not driving your car around. You don't need much gas in the tank. For certain diseases, if you're insulin resistant, if you're diabetic, low carb diets. I mean, there's a ton of research out there that they're the best approach. But that's the problem, is that people get confused and think that applies to everyone everywhere. And as you know, with your background, that exercise really does, specifically anaerobic training, creates this unique metabolic, hormonal, physiological state in the body for basically 24 to 48 hours after a training session. So the reality is, if you're training 3 more days a week, you're in a completely different metabolic state than the sedentary person basically the entire week. So thus, basically the nutritional needs are much different than the sedentary person. So while low carb diets are very popular in the fat loss industry, they're not the ideal approach for athletes. And we see a lot of, what I've seen in my practice is a lot of people who try to pair low carb diets with anaerobic training, say, bodybuilding training or strength training or CrossFit training. They end up with a lot of drawbacks, a lot of negative consequences. So things like muscle loss, poor performance, even low thyroid, low testosterone, impaired metabolic rate, things like this. You just see it's a mismatched diet and training program, and we kind of lose that principle of specificity, if you want to say, in the diet industry. We get it, if you're like you with what you do. If someone has anterior tilted hips and lower cross syndrome, what you prescribe for them in their training program is much different than, say, a high level athlete, right? Same thing with diets. If you're working with someone who's sedentary and obese and insulin resistant, what you're going to give to them and the advice you're going to give to them is very much different than someone who's a high-level athlete training 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. You just have to get down to specificity with diets, just like training.
Okay. And then if we kind of look at, a lot of diets end up recommending that people should end up doing multiple meals throughout the day. Let's say 6 small meals throughout the day, spread out every 2-3 hours. And this might work for some people, but it might not end up being best for everybody. Maybe you can kind of explain, why these multiple small meals might not be the best for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a viable approach for certain demographics. Plenty of fitness competitors and bodybuilders get great results on that plan. So I'm not saying it can't work, but the reality is, when you get past, say, tradition and myth and start looking at the real science, most of the studies now they're out there now. They're everywhere, basically saying that as long as you control for calories and macros and food choices, you can. Meal frequency is irrelevant in terms of fat loss and muscle gain and things like that. So you can break up your diet any way you see fit, and that's the most practical and sustainable for you. So for most busy professionals who have a career and a social life and a family, 6 small meals a day eating, every 2 hours is just completely impractical with their schedule and their life. So what I tend to do is try to get them to bust through that myth and basically say, listen, let's structure your diet that makes it a little more practical for you.
Interview. So a lot of talk when it comes to diets is when is the best time to have your largest meal. Some people think it's breakfast, some people think it's lunch, and your focus ends up being that your biggest meal and your biggest feast should end up being, in the evening. And maybe you can kind of explain, why that time ends up being best, when it kind of your focus ends up being fat loss.
Yeah, it's basically the key principle of any diet I prescribe, and it's for a variety of reasons. And I think that's one of the things that's a problem in the fitness industry is a lot of people will look at it from just pure physiology first. And so what happens is you get all these diet plans that look great on paper and sound, really fantastic in the classroom, but they don't work in the real world. So I tend to look at diets first from practicality, reality, sustainability, functionality first, and then get down into the physiology just to make sure it jives. But so for a variety of reasons, basically just evolution is one. It's like, hey, we evolved as hunter-gatherers. We spent most of our existence basically, eating lighter during the day while we were active, and then coming home and feasting on whatever we could catch. So instinctually, that's what most of us want to do. Then there's obviously social reasons. Hey, most of our socializing happens at night over dinner. We want to sit down and eat a nice dinner with our families. Business happens over dinners, things like that. A big one is psychology, and my wife, whose background is in psychology, we've talked about this. She's contributed as well, and it's basically most people can sacrifice and eat lighter during the day as long as they know they get to the reward at night, which is a big, satisfying, satiating dinner. The least important, which us fitness nerds care about the most, is the physiology, and it's basically this structure optimizes fat burning during the day by keeping blood sugar and insulin levels controlled, and then we create a hyper-anabolic environment at night where we have a big meal of protein and carbs to restock energy reserves, provide the raw ingredients necessary to build muscle. So you get the best of both worlds. You get optimized fat burning during the day, and you get a hyper-anabolic environment at night. So, but that's the least important. What I've found in my practice is that when we switch to the structure of eating lighter during the day and eating big at night, people's adherence rates skyrocket. Their hope that they can stick to a plan as a sustainable lifestyle plan skyrockets, and then as a result, they're basically just get phenomenal results because it's a plan they can actually stick to and follow in the real world.
Awesome. Okay. Now, another thing that's kind of come out, and really what's become popular, one of the diets is the Paleo diet, and it's probably been really pushed hard by the CrossFit community. And it's, everyone thinks that everyone should be on the Paleo diet and everyone should be doing Paleo, and everything's Paleo. Everyone should tattoo themselves with Paleo. So maybe you can explain that. Maybe we can kind of talk about who it doesn't work for,
right,
and who it might be a good fit for.
Yeah, well, first off, I think we should all be running around with just a leaf covering our goods. I think we'd all be a lot happier that way. But, So first off, I love the Paleo diet, and I have, I'm friends with Rob Wolf, and I think he does a fantastic job of what he does. I think the Paleo diet is a great template, an educational template, and simple tool to basically break through nutrition myths. Focus on some very high-level concepts of cutting out refined foods, emphasizing more real foods, and it's 80% of what I basically recommend in all my approaches. The problem is, again, we get back to specificity, right? It's not always the greatest approach for an anaerobic athlete, because anaerobic athletes, they burn through carbohydrates, they burn through glucose in their training, glycogen in their training sessions. And so if you try to follow it full blown, if you're an athlete, you can run into a lot of problems. And that's really what I ran into myself. I suffered a lot of metabolic and hormonal drawbacks trying to combine the paleo diet with anaerobic training. I lost a lot of muscle. I was at my skinny, fattest when I knew I had followed more carb-based diets and sport performance diets and then competed in bodybuilding and things like that. So, like low testosterone. I went and had it checked. I had the testosterone of a 70-year-old at mid-20s, mid to late 20s, and so I knew something was off. And it really was about getting back into sports nutrition research, which is part of my formal education. And really getting down into saying, okay, for some demographics, this is by far the best approach to improve biomarkers of health and lose fat and just get on a healthier lifestyle. But for certain athletes, man, we need to start integrating some sports nutrition research and principles and get back to providing the right fuel for the right training program.
Okay, good. Now, one of the other kind of concepts that you kind of focus in on is like the Japanese diet and utilizing the Japanese diet as a template, and maybe you can explain what that is and how that can end up benefiting like the general exerciser out there.
Yeah, and really, like I said, what I love about the paleo diet is that it's a simple template that kind of cuts through a lot of myths and just gives people actionable strategies that they can apply. And so I was looking for another type of template I could use to give to regular exercisers, again, to basically just give them a simple template. And that's where I came up with basically a Japanese template. It's biased, obviously, I'm half Japanese, but you look at a variety of cultural diets. Kintaban diet is out there. There's the traditional Hawaiian diet. Basically, what it is it keeps all the benefits of the paleo diet, but then makes it more targeted to exercisers. So what is a Japanese diet? It's basically a paleo diet, which is, fish, animal proteins, non-starchy vegetables, whole fruit. And then the major difference is that it adds back in some beneficial starch foods for the regular exerciser. So things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, white rice, things like that. And it basically just keeps all the benefits of the paleo diet, which is cutting out some more problematic carbohydrates like gluten-based carbs, sugars, things like that, but getting the right carbs in the right amounts to the regular exerciser. So that's why I like that template, because again, it just simplifies it for people. Hey, eat some fish, rice, and vegetables. Eat a steak, potato, and some vegetables. Eat a piece of whole fruit for dessert. It's really a simplified template that I like to use, and it gets across to people instead of saying, hey, let's get into the biochemistry of carbs versus fats, things like that. Most people don't give a crap. They just want a plan they can follow in the real world. So that's why I try to use that.
Okay. Now that ends up being all my questions, Nate. Do you have any points that you want to, points that you want to leave with people before we wrap up the interview?
Yeah, I guess basically just summarizing kind of my overall approach is it's basically a three-parter. It's one, we try to optimize food choices for overall health. So things like the paleo diet or the Japanese template really helps simplify that for people. The second then is basically I go into different targeted numbers based on the demographics, right? So carb-based diets for exercisers, little lower carbs for sedentary populations. So you basically get the person to the right numbers and diet based on their metabolic condition and training and goals. And then the final is, and to me is the most important, is finding a practical and sustainable diet structure, which is what I think basically what we've done with eating lighter during the day and recommending eating the biggest meal at night.
Okay. So Nate, thank you very much for your time. Now, where can people get more information about you, or get a little bit more information about you, and get more information kind of on your philosophy when it comes to Diet?
Yeah. So we basically all those strategies we just outlined is, people have been telling me for a while. They're like, hey, all these articles, great. You got to write a book, put it all in one spot. So basically, that's what I've done. We created books called Feast Your Fat Away, and it basically goes into those different templates. It goes into the science of why we set up the diet structure a certain way. It gives people, those practical strategies to make it a functional lifestyle plan in the real world. So basically, I just put the culmination of, I guess, 15 years of research and trial and error and experimentation with both myself and, the thousands of clients I've worked with, and basically put it all in one spot.
Awesome. And where can people get more information on that?
Yeah, it'll be at feastyourfataway.com, and they can check out what we're rocking and see if it jives with them.
Okay, and then you have a personal website as well. Maybe you can let people know what that is as well.
Yeah, it's just my name, NateMiyaki.com, NateMiyaki.com, and like I said, it's people will remember Mr. Miyagi. It's same thing but with a K. All right, so NateMiyaki.com is where my personal site is.
Awesome. So thank you very much for your time, Nate. And thank you very much, Exercises for Injuries readers, listeners, and viewers. This is Rick Casals from ExercisesForInjuries.com with another interview for you. Now, make sure to swing by ExercisesForInjuries.com. There's a good chance that I have an article, video, or interview for you when it comes to your injury or pain. Secondly, if you're watching this on YouTube, head up above, hit subscribe. What that'll do is every couple days you'll get a video interview like this, or a video that I've done when it relates to injury and pain, or a guest video from one of my friends in the health and fitness world. Lastly, head down below, hit like, and leave myself and Nate a comment or question. So, excuse me. So this is Rick Casals from ExercisesForInjuries.com with Nate, Mr. Miyagi, but with a K, saying take care and bye-bye.